Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers seed starting supplies? On our site, you'll only find the equipment that we love and use ourselves. It's all Flower Farmer approved. So visit our online store today at thegardenersworkshop.com. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I'm pretty thrilled to be here. I'm once again shooting a video along with my podcast. So if you're listening to me over on a podcast app, you can also catch it over on my YouTube channel where you can see me if you'd like to do that, and my beautiful new backdrop. We had a great big step for our business this past week and had a big stage or a backdrop installed for so many lives that we do. And this is just one of several. And I'm really enjoying doing it. So friends, if you're new here, I just want to say I'm so glad you dropped in. My name is Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I'm with the Gardener's Workshop. The Gardener's Workshop grew out of my dream of 1997 reading a book and then launching my flower farm in 1998. Even though I lived in the middle of the city, I was barely a gardener, didn't have a greenhouse, couldn't have a greenhouse because I was in the city, no tractor, no acreage, but I chased my dream. And here we are all these years later and just loving this flower farm and life that we have built, because now I'm in the education mode of being able to share what we've done from our success these last 2.5 decades. And I couldn't be more thrilled about it. And I'm so glad you're here. And you will soon learn about me that I tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, share the failures, and oftentimes that it can be done even though you think you can't. Whether that means you don't have a lot of land or you can't have a tractor. I mean, I felt so penalized when I first started flower farming so many years ago because I was embarrassed to say to people, well, I only have like a 1/2 acre cutting garden. And but I was producing thousands of stems of flowers, but I still felt like I wasn't a grown-up flower farmer. And so friends, if that's you, you are in the right place, because, we just find a way to do it, whatever it is that you want to do. And so today I'm really talking about a subject that is really starting to mushroom in the cut flower industry. And so today I'm talking about easy flower sales, and we're talking about the sales in spring versus summer. For most people, I just want to do a little sidebar here. Now, if you happen to be one of those fortunate people that lives and farms in a place where you're a destination, meaning, tourists come and you have that is your market, or you're in a wedding destination place for the spring and mostly summer, then this may not be true for you. But for the rest of us, spring is the natural, most high demand for cut flowers. It's for planting. I mean, look how people storm the nurseries, y'all. I mean, it's like people will buy anything that's not nailed down because they've been coming out of a long winter. They're ready to do anything, and they're full of so much hope. There's no weeds, there's no heat yet, there's no drought, and there's no bugs yet. So people are just revved up. So it is just the easiest time of the year. And what I want to talk about today is that most people don't even know about spring blooms. They may know about some bulbs that bloom in the spring and maybe some perennials that bloom in the spring, but they haven't figured, it's because they haven't figured it out. They don't really know about all of the spring blooming annuals, better known as AKA cool flowers, y'all. There's my book right back there. And they kind of fell out of fashion. They say like in the 60s, back when moms started going to work and leaving homes. And what happened then is home gardens just kind of dissipated because there wasn't time to be a working mom and have the kids. They hadn't perfected what many people have actually figured out how to do today, right? And so people started relying on nurseries to buy plants instead of starting seed at home. And because of the awkward planting time of most cool season hardy annuals, we're talking about snapdragon, sweet peas, bells of Ireland. There's just this enormous poppies. There's just this amazing group of flowers that fall into this family that just kind of fell off of our radar. And this is what most people say, because I said it too. Well, we just can't grow those in the South. And friends, I'm here to tell you that pretty much we can all grow them no matter where you live. We just have different planting times. And my purpose of this podcast today is to share that we didn't know about it, but you should know about it now. And we have provided the resources and the tools for you to actually learn about it, because spring blooms is the easiest time for flower farmers to sell flowers, just like it is for nurseries to sell plants. Everybody sells plants in the spring. I mean, so many flower farmers bring plants to the market. It's like people that don't otherwise sell plants in the very spring. So I just want us to step away from thinking what you're thinking now and just step back and look at the big picture. And I say that because I feel like most people, because spring is the highest demand season, it just doesn't get billed that way. And it's because we think we're so limited. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to plant all these perennials maybe, or invest in all these bulbs. And I'm not really set up to grow bulbs, or they're a high investment. Bulbs can be a pretty high return. I'm not a quicker return, but perennials is longer term. And so people just miss, right? Well, that is not the case with cool season hardy annuals, better known as cool flowers, right? Y'all, you can plant them at their proper planting time, whether that is fall or very early spring for you, or maybe you can do both. But we have to give more billing to thinking about figuring it out and planning for cool flowers. Because I will tell you that it can be the biggest cash crop of the year. And I think that they even get more of a bad rap because so often for flower farmers, you're not growing a lot of perennials or anything yet, you're kind of coming in, then you grow a ton of warm season tender annuals, all the stuff that blooms all summer long. Well, unless you've really built your business with customers that have a high demand for those things in the summer, which is not everybody, typically in July and August, sales slow down. Weddings are not happening as much. Events aren't happening. People are vacationing. It's just a natural slowdown time. Then flower farmers, that's when they have their highest reap of harvest, right? So you're buried alive in flowers and you have no customers. And it's just a snowball effect of getting a bad taste in your mouth about annuals and even flower farming. We lose a lot of flower farmers that way. They only think about warm season tender annuals. They don't know about this other family that blooms during the high demand time because there's a little bit awkward planting time, right? But you can get through this, y'all. It just takes a little bit of planning and thinking out of the side of the box. When I wrote Cool Flowers, the book 10 years ago, it was a real uphill push. I was told by so many people not really in flower farming, more than in the bigger gardening world, horticulturists and those people, it's like, that didn't work. Well, y'all, I didn't make the cool flower concept up. I learned from old books what our grandmas and our great grandmas used to do. They were so in tune with the garden because they all had home gardens. It was part of home life, right? You had a vegetable garden. They always planted some plants. They knew to plant sweet peas and bush peas to eat, in the dead of winter most often. And so we just lost connectivity to the garden and the seasonality of it all. And I'm just saying all this because there's so many people that still have not have the bad taste of growing a bunch of annuals in the summer, not selling them because they're just in their baby steps of their business, right? But I wanted to really share with you kind of I'm taking the long road around to the story that I wanted to tell today is about a new trend that we're seeing that I am thrilled about. And that is about some flower farmers that in fact are beginning to build and model their flower farming businesses around this cool season hardy annual family of flowers. And they're even embellishing it with some other flowers that bloom during that time. So my first introduction to this concept happened, I guess it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Good friends, Jonathan and Megan Leiss of Springforth Farm. They were a young family. They didn't have kids when I met them yet. And they were up and coming in the flower farming world. And they were homesteaders first, meaning they grew all their food. They even hunted and put up meat. I mean, they were really working to be self-sustained, right? And he was a fireman and Megan was a kindergarten teacher. And their plan is that she would quit her job when they decided to start a family. And during that time, they started flower farming. And they started out like we all do, doing everything. And then they niched. Well, their last niche was they decided that they were going to just sell flowers in very early spring, and in the beginning, very early summer, like in June, because June is still a really high demand time because there's lots of weddings then. People haven't really got into the vacationing mode and the heat of summer yet. So Jonathan and Megan, basically, that doesn't mean you don't farm the rest of the year. It just means you are not selling flowers. They initially stopped selling at the end of June. So that meant July, August, September, and October. They were not cutting and selling flowers. They basically used July and August to really ramp up their homestead. That's when the vegetables were coming in. They were putting up food. They were going on vacation with ultimately with their kids, but even before they had kids. So they were taking that 2 months off from harvesting, or actually 4 months, but those 2 months that are the toughest on flower farmers. When you have the most flowers, you may have the least amount of demand. It is hot. The pest pressure is strong. I mean, it's just a tough time of the year. So then they had babies. Then they cut it back to the end of May 31st. And they were then expanding extension season at the beginning of spring. And they had a hoop house. And so they were at first just growing cool season hardy annuals. Then they added in some bulb crops that would also complement during that time, knowing that, at this date, they're shutting down their harvesting situation. And y'all, I just can't tell you how brilliant I think this is. Those thoughts never crossed my mind. I mean, I just jumped in and went full board and just grew everything I could until I figured out the annual system. And then when I got the annual system, I started as early as, and out in the field, right? Because I don't have any hoops, but I do use low tunnels, starting as early as I could to grow through to the end. I think it is such a brilliant idea to focus your business to have sales as early and as late as you can in that spring season, that high demand season, and to create not only family and lifetime the rest of the time, but think how much better prepared you are for the spring. Think how great your cool flower garden could be if you really prepared on time, grew more of it. Those crops. I mean, I know that for me, when I was selling to all those florists, I sold Bells of Ireland, and so we had 23 florists on our list, and I sold a little different than most people did. I started at the top of my list. They were ranked by a system that I had for them, and the first customer saw everything. Well, Bells of Ireland never got past the first customer. He'd buy it all that crop I had. But I never really had opportunity to grow so much more of that. And when I think about this system and think about how Bells of Ireland could have been a huge crop for all my customers. Do you see what I mean? It allows you to focus your business, your time, your resources on the season of the year, if that works for you. I'm not saying everybody should do this. I'm just saying, what a business model. The easy flower sales, spring versus summer. So this is a trend. So Megan and I'm sure there were other people doing it, but Megan and Jonathan were the first people that I was aware of doing it. Now I'm reading of more and more people that are realizing that if they had had more cool season hardy annuals to sell, they would have sold a lot more. I mean, people, it is just so heartwarming, y'all, especially in our student Facebook groups. To hear students like, oh my gosh, I just took all of my XYZ to the florist and they bought it all. I mean, what am I going to do now? I don't have enough. And the really disappointing part of all this is, so let's just say you didn't grow very many cool flowers and it's May when, your cool flowers that you planted, because you just planted in very early spring, you weren't able to fall plant or didn't know to fall plant or whatever. You didn't get in even earlier. And then all of a sudden summer hits and you're so excited and all of a sudden they drop off buying. It's really heartbreaking. I know, been there, done it. So this model is just getting more and more interesting. So I just went and visited this past week one of my flower farming students and mentees, Emma Mobley of End of Nowhere Flower Farm. Emma, you can check her out on social media, and we'll put a link to her social media in the podcast here. So Emma, who lives about an hour away from me, and so she's here in the South, and she has taken that model and tweaked it to what she feels like. So this is her third year, this current year is. She feels like, she really has her finger on what her customer want and what their behaviors are. And when she learned about this model and then she looked at her customers, she looked back and she could see that in late July and August, her sales she has a great little farm stand on her farm that she sells out, and she only opens it on Saturdays, and she sells to florists, and she has a CSA. I think she has 45 people in her CSA. She has a nice little business going. So she looked back and saw, gosh, in mid to late July and all of August, sales are like half of what they are all the other times. I am hot. The bugs are bad. Why don't I draw a line in the sand? So she didn't do like Megan and Jonathan, where they just stuck with very early spring and spring sales. Emma wants to have spring sales and fall sales. She has value for both of those. So this means that she's going to carve out 8 weeks in the middle of the summer. I mean, she has a kid, she has a family, and that allows you, literally, you play your cards right and plan. You can actually go on a vacation in the middle of the summer. Not many flower farmers can really do that effectively unless you really have help that's really well trained, that can do all the jobs that you do, because it's kind of tough to leave your farm and come back to a mess. I've done that. We just chose to not vacation in the heat of the summer, right? But so Emma this is her first year. She's doing it. When her Lysianthus finishes up, she has a florist that's lined up to take all of that. Then she shuts down her farm stand and her CSAs don't get flowers. Then when fall starts back up, and I'm not sure if that's September 1st or what her date is, her CSAs will start back up, her farm stand will open, and she'll start visiting florists again. Think how rejuvenated you'll be. Think of how much better prepared. You shouldn't be behind on anything. This is a model, friends, that I think is fantastic. First off, I think what's fantastic is that people are starting to embrace that when you're the business owner, you get to decide for your business. You don't just have to go in and put pedal to the metal and do what everybody else is doing. You can find your own way. And there are so many niches. We had our open farm here just recently, and we had students, we had 17 states represented. I'm here in Virginia. We had people, oh my gosh, Wisconsin and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Florida and just Illinois, and hearing not only the success stories of our students that just truly, Dave Dowling was here with me, as well as Ellen Frost, and for us to hear what our students are doing, the niches that they are carving out and having success, people providing income for their family, down to people that are stay-at-home mamas that want to just contribute to the family budget. It is up to you, friends. And what I really want to say is, it is in your ball, is in your park. And I want you to consider spring sales. And there is no better way to get in on the ground floor with low investment and to get this figured out than with Cool Flowers, AKA Cool Season Hardy Annuals. We're up to, I think, 42 or 43 different flowers, and there's no end in sight. And the diversity, it's low investment, high return, high return, y'all. The visit to Emma's just really made it apparent to me. We all think that we have to sell flowers when flowers are growing, and that's not necessarily the case. Why not take that step back, look at the big picture, and plan for the busiest season of the year, and how can you make that the bigger part of your farm and business, or the focus of your farm and business. And what better way? I mean, I know that back when I first started selling flowers to florists in 1998, there was a lady around here who is no longer. She was the dahlia lady, they called her. They never only saw her when dahlias started. I mean, dahlias will bloom all summer around here, but the pest pressure is so bad, you don't really count on them until late summer. And then there's 6 weeks in the fall where they are just amazing. And she made her income during those 6 weeks. How smart was that? But we tend to constantly want to be adding, instead of making the most out of the perhaps the easiest fish to catch, right? We want to keep adding on. And I just want to say that getting your plan. And so what does that plan actually look like? You got to have your seeds. You have to know where you're going to plant cool flowers. You've got to prep your beds in fall for very early spring plantings. What that means is that when I'm prepping my beds for fall planting of those things that I can fall plant here, of the cool season hardy annuals, I make additional beds that aren't getting planted in fall. Those beds are completely prepared and they sit empty all winter to wait for my very early spring planting, which for me, so very early spring planting is 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. For me, that's Valentine's Day. That time of the year, we can have snow. The ground can be frozen still. It's wet for sure. You can't prepare beds. That's the number one things people say to me is, oh my gosh, I can't prepare then. Well, you don't. You have to think ahead, y'all. Think about how far in advance they started making that bikini you see in the store in January for sale, right? That's the mentality you've got to get on board with. So focusing on the easiest sales of the year starts with some planning. And we have a lot of great resources. One of those great resources is I currently have a brand new free webinar that just came out, the 3 foolproof steps to success with cool flowers. They are the 3 things that I see people blunder the most. And it's usually just because they don't get it, or they don't understand, or they overlook it, or they've misunderstood it. It's a free webinar. You can request it in the show notes here, and would love for you to have it. Of course, my book, Cool Flowers, is the jumping off point. If you're not familiar or you haven't read the book, you got to get the book. That's where it all starts. And you can get that at thegardenersworkshop.com, as well as we have a brand new course out called Cool Season Seed to Harvest that you'll find also all of that over at thegardenersworkshop.com. And friends, the other thing I want to say that I found that I struggled with in this, what I feel like people really need to take away from this is, if you're going to say, okay, I'm doing this, right? So you need to get educated on, the whole cool flower concept. But then for me, because of the awkward planning time, I never was really well prepared, meaning I can remember waiting for seeds to come. I should have been planting them like the week before. Let's just say the direct sown stuff in fall. I should have been planting them the week before, but I'm just ordering them. And of course, that's a very busy time of the year for seed companies. Sometimes it can take 2 to 3 weeks to get your order. I mean, you're already set up for failure, right? And so not having your seeds on hand, and then more importantly, not realizing that there's some different tools that we use when you're winter growing and cool season growing. For me, we never fall planted any cool season hardy annuals that didn't survive our winter, but there's things you can do to really enhance your growing conditions, which gives you better developed plants that'll bloom earlier. Things like making low tunnels, having hoops, having lightweight row cover, having the proper weight bags, which just means you have more success, right? I just can't tell you how having all of and you never stop learning, y'all. I'm still learning. We still do things. It's like, well, let's try it this way this year for a specific crop. And I want to just say, I have killed so many cool flowers over the years. I have grown millions of transplants or sowed seeds and transplants. And that's what it takes over and over again. If you have not hit the nail on the head yet, friends, nobody does first time out or even second time, and sometimes even the third time out. It takes doing it over and over and over again. And the best part about being the annual flower farmer that I am is it's low investment. Seeds and your time, and getting your planning and when you plant and learning your garden's best sweet spots to actually plant. We just need to hit right here, y'all, right between the eyes. If you're watching me, if you're listening to me on a podcast app, I'm pointing right between my eyes. We have got to remember that spring is the easiest time of the year to sell flowers. I mean, it's like if I was a new flower farmer, that is definitely the season I would want to start. It is instant gratification. I feel like why I became a successful flower farmer is I launched my business on a fall planted garden. Indian summer rudbeckia, snapdragons, sweet peas, and a sweet William. And that gave me early blooms. And so I walked into my first floral customers shop in the greatest season of the year, and I sold everything. And because of that immediate success, it fueled my fire to go on. And I just think that is a great time of the year to actually launch your flower farm. And we need to start planning and preparing and treating the spring like the season as it is, y'all. It can make or break you for the rest of the year. What I most often see is folks that are consumed in all the other seasons. They start late, they plant late. I mean, we constantly at the Gardener's Workshop get messages and phone calls and emails from people saying, I have XYZ seed. I know it should have been planted in fall, but don't you think I can do it now? Well, sure you can, but don't plan on having success. You know, the whole cool flower concept is this. It's planting on time so that these flower plants can become well established before they have to perform. And when you give them that means they bloom earlier, they grow twice as tall most often, produce twice as many stems, and they're more disease and pest resistant. And that is all because they were allowed to get established before they had to perform. And it is so awkward, y'all, from what most people think the planting times. But I am here to tell you, follow the concept and you will reap the reward. So friends, if you want to learn more about the work that we're doing at the Gardener's Workshop, helping flower farmers all over the world to either explore, start, and hit the reset button on their flower farming business, I invite you to join us over there. Sign up for our newsletter where you will get, we send out so much great content and things like the webinar that I told you that you can get. That'll go out to all of our email newsletter people naturally. The 3 foolproof steps to success with cool flowers. And friends, so check it out all at thegardenersworkshop.com. And I love it if you would drop me a review if you're enjoying the podcast. And if you're watching me over on YouTube, let me know, do you like seeing my face and my backdrop? So friends, I can't wait to hear the stories of how you all are growing cool season hardy annuals and nailing it. Ciao.